welcome back here at the exhibition floor of the Esomar Congress in Dublin. Obviously, as you can see, which is very un-Esomar-like, we're kind of running a little bit behind schedule, but we figured that we'd rather wait with this program and let you finish everything that happened on Channel 1, and then we can do a proper program here on Channel 3 instead of just starting and going ahead. So we're very glad you're here now. Sorry if you had to wait a little bit, but let's get started right away, because you've just been watching a few very daring pitches, 1-minute pitches on Channel 1, and we would like to continue a little bit in that theme with our own little Dragon's Den. And for that, I'm joined by my own two dragons. We have Alyssa Milton here from 7-Eleven in Australia. Welcome. And Florence Gasnet from Heineken International. You guys will be here and you will be challenging the 3 pitches of inspiring methodology that we will see. You are often referred to as the client side in research. What will you be looking for when listening to the pitches?
We're looking for something different, quite innovative. We get a lot of cold calls about things that are quite run-of-the-mill, so I'm looking forward to hearing something quite inspiring.
All right, and for you, Florence?
Yeah, really, with 25 years of experience at various big companies, I can smell the issues from far away and very accurately, and I'm always looking for, is it really a competitive advantage? Is it faster? Is it digging deeper than what we had before?
Oh, wow. Well, you just raised the bar enormously for our first pitcher, who's going to be Grant Miller. He's the VP Innovation and Integration at RIWI. He's also famous because in 2003, he became a scuba master with over 120 scuba dives and 78 days of skiing. Well, you can still see it. He looks very fit. Grant, take it away. The floor is yours for 1 minute.
Well, thank you. And thanks a lot, Dragons, for listening to my pitch. It's a very short pitch and on new emerging technologies in the marketplace, of which our company, RIWI, has actually introduced one called Random Domain Intercept Technology. I think you'll agree one of the biggest problems we have facing market research today is our inability to get new people to actually answer surveys. And one of the last conferences I was at, one of the juxtapositions between dynamic sample and panel sample that was given asked the question, how many minutes today have you spent doing surveys before you started this one? And on the panel average was 20 minutes, and the dynamic sample average was over 30. That's a huge problem. Too many people are relying on the very same people, a very narrow population, to do too many surveys. So what we've invented or patented at RIWI is random domain intercept technology. And what that what that gives us is the ability to access every single device in the world that is connected to the internet. And how we do that is when people directly navigate or type into the URL bar, instead of actually using an app or a link, and they raise the possibility of making an input error. They can spell something wrong, and when they do, they go to an unintended place on the internet. So that might be a broken link, a 404 error page, or it could be a domain site. And that usually serves up an ad or a click-through monetization. But what we've done is we've accessed those hundreds of thousands of sites that have random people making random mistakes landing on them, and we ask short surveys, and we have the patent on that. And so what that gives us is an entirely new, fresh sample source. And when I say fresh, what I mean is when we ask the question, have you done a survey in the past day, past week, past month, more than a month ago, or never, 80% of our data that we collect, or people that are responding, they have not done a survey in the past week. So it's ability, and it's a new technology that's answering a huge problem that we have in our industry, which is accessing fresh opinions of people in every country in the world. And when I say every country in the world, we just completed a 160,000 response study over 18 months on mental health care. And it was done in 219 countries and territories. So it truly is a global technology. Every country Heineken wants to sell beer, we can actually collect data for you. Yes, that was actual pitch in a pitch. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Grant. Well done. Yes, you can applaud them if you're watching right here. So, dragons, new fresh samples of data. Who of you would like to challenge Grant a bit first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Take it away.
So one of our challenges for 7-Eleven is actually accessing younger consumers to answer surveys, sort of, I guess, 17 years and under. How is that coming to life in your sample?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And it's actually one thing it's one of our biases that we have, that we live with every day, is people who use the internet more often are more susceptible to landing on our surveys. So we have a huge skew of young people. So 14 to 24 would be somewhere close to about 50% of our data set in any given time we collect data. So if you're looking to reach millennials, if you're looking to males, as we go across the world, there's a predominant male population on the internet, especially in countries like Pakistan or new emerging countries, where women don't have the same access to the internet. But in a market research sense, young males are the hardest things we try to get to every day. So in that sense, we're a perfect tool for reaching young people, or beer drinkers, or...
All right, well, let's go to the beer drinkers. Florence?
So the acoustics are not perfect here, so I need to understand, is it only website errors? Because a lot of stuff is not happening on websites. So how do you deal with the people who are only on other devices, WhatsApps, chats, whatever?
It is people who are utilizing the internet. But it could be all devices. People are using smartphones, tablets, desktops. It doesn't matter. You're still using the backbone of the internet, which is the URL bar. And when you navigate and you spell something correctly on your smartphone, tablet, or desktop, we're able to ask you survey questions and give you a big exit button. And if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. But globally, we'll get 10% response rates over 10 questions, which is a kind of amazing new technology, but vast differences across the world. Like Middle East, for example, would be much higher.
Last question, then we're out of time.
How do you deal with languages?
Right.
Because often I have the impression we talk about English only, but with that very random sampling, you need to have all the languages of the world available to you.
Absolutely, and we discussed that with our clients beforehand, exactly what languages do you need to be served up in a certain country. So when someone lands on our site, we recognize the device they're using, the operating system they're using, and where they're coming from. And when that happens, we're able to serve a survey up for them in their appropriate language. And a lot of times, if it's like a country like Switzerland, for example, we'll have 4 different languages that they can select from on the very first questions, and it routes them to the language of their choice. So we always approach people in their own language.
All right, well, thank you very much, Grant. And if you want to learn more about this technology, you're actually going to be on channel 2 after the break, right? So there we can go more in depth about this technology. Well, we keep it short and frisk in this Dragon's Den. So at the moment, our next pitcher is stepping in. It's David Backen. He is the founder and managing director of the Foreseeable Futures Group, and he's also a former president of the American Marketing Association. David, take it away.
Thank you. So, like Sherlock Holmes trying to solve a murder mystery, in market research, we are trying to tell a story out of a set of facts. And it falls on us to figure out which facts are important and which facts are unimportant. And my innovation is actually very simple, and it's 250 years old. It was invented or discovered first by an English clergyman, Thomas Bayes, wrote a paper that was published in 1763. It was independently discovered by a Frenchman, mathematician, Pierre-Simon Laplace, who expanded it. It's a very simple idea, and what it does is allows us to understand the probability of something being true. It's Bayes' theorem. It has only 3 numbers in it that are used in different ways, an x, a y, and a z, and it's very simple. And better than that, it's free and it's proven. And it is a way for us to weigh competing evidence to understand where we should place our bets. And in fact, it was discovered as a way to improve gambling results. So, as I said, it's very simple. It's described as a perfect inference engine. I built my whole way of thinking about evidence around Bayes' theorem, and my only pitch is for you to come and hear me talk about how it can help us solve a murder mystery today at 4:10 p.m.
Thank you very much, David. So you're also now pitching your own talk later today, Channel 1. So, Dragons.
Yeah, I think the interesting question for me, looking at how many people are really struggling with the concept of probability, do you think you will have enough resonance in an average business audience?
Actually, I think it's a natural way of thinking about business. When we think about making decisions in business, we're weighing the probabilities of certain outcomes. So one example I did some market research for a company, predicted a market share for an improved product, 25% market share. Management came back and said, we don't believe you because our current market share is 10%. The market research says 25%. I apply my confidence interval. I say, well, maybe it's as low as 22%, or maybe it's as high as 28%. But management still doesn't buy it because market share is 10%. How can I reconcile those two differences? Well, Bayes' theorem allows me to do that, and I may come up with an estimate that it's only 50% likely that I'll get that 25% market share, and management then says, okay, I'm not going to bet on that. We're going to stick with the current product.
All right.
Okay. Sounds quite high tech to me.
It's quite a technical.
So I was going to ask,
statistical
are there snacks at your 410? Apart from that, so how are you actually gathering the data to inform these decisions? Is that already existing within an organisation, or are you conducting research to inform the probability?
Well, the wonderful thing about this theorem, this formula, is that I can use all different kinds of data. I can use data that's already been collected. I can use data that I will go out and collect, or I can use informed opinion. I can ask a bunch of people to make their best guess about a probability, and I can put that into the formula. And so, for example, if I have a guess that somebody is lying, a witness in a case of crime is lying, I can use my own judgment about their character, about the way in which they describe the story, to come up with a probability that they're lying. And then, if that doesn't work, I can change that probability as new evidence comes in.
All right. Well, thank you very much, David. And I think it's promising. It is somewhat technical, but it definitely, and I've read the paper. If you haven't read the paper, all papers are available on the Esomar website as well. And there it's very clearly explained how this helps you to better interpret the data that you find. Well, next up is our third pitch. And if you think, well, this lady looks familiar, yeah, that's because you just saw her pitching on Channel 1 on the big stage as well. So she had somewhat of a warm-up round. I think, Caroline, you should keep it short, and then our dragons can really challenge you a bit on what you have to say. Caroline Henn is the International Strategic Lead for Google Consumer Surveys, and you're pitching that to us as a new technique. Take it away.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I guess you heard my pitch a little bit, so probably following up with Grand, we also don't really believe that online sample nowadays, or the traditional online panels, can be both fast and representative at the same time, which is basically why Google came in and thought, can we do something totally differently? And that's why we started cooperating with a network of so many websites, premium content websites, where basically we intercept people as and when they want to read articles. Premium content doesn't mean highly intellectual, so that could also be the latest football stats or information on hip-hop. You were talking about the young audiences, but we also have information on knitting, or I think third teeth as well, so that we can really reach a very broad sample through lots of technology that Google has. The great way of inferring demographics, so already knowing people's age, gender, and region helps us a lot, because obviously we know attention spans get shorter. So we only offer 10 questions, but we have so much information either through the inferred demos, but then also through cookie lists, so people have been exposed to your ads, or also geolocation data, where as Google, we own Google Maps, so it's very easy to just use the little blue dot and basically actually really find people who have been to a supermarket, who are buying your product and asking about promotion effectiveness, etc., etc. So there is a short tool where you can even reach very small incidences down to 2%, really. It's not a problem at all, or really very specific audiences as and when they're doing specific things.
All right.
That's basically it.
Very clear. Judges, let's challenge her a bit.
Thank you, Caroline. Question, doesn't that disrupt the whole idea of the customer, of your customer, because they want to look for something and instead they are getting questions back from Google? Isn't that really disrupting what they are desiring?
So basically what we're doing is we're not working with our own properties here, so it's not that you're disrupted when you're searching for something, but it's actually when you want to read an article on a specific site. So we cooperate like with the Mirror Group, for example. So we're basically giving them content in exchange of basically the survey information that they give us, and it's basically a little bit of an education process as well that Google thought would be very, very useful, educating people that content can't be free. Someone has to write it. So basically, that's the process on the one side. On the other side, we also have an app where we give people Play Store credit. So that's more like an online panel or mobile panel. It's the world's largest mobile panel where basically people can download apps, music, games. So obviously there the incentivization is probably more standard, whereas on the other side, it's the content in exchange for giving us information.
Thank you. And so who owns the data? So how is that passed back to the client?
Always interesting when we're talking to
Of
Google,
course,
right?
very, very importantly as well. The client owns the data, so we can't even access the data. It's all on your side. There is an online dashboard, so everything we have an own tool where you program your own surveys. They go through a review, they are fielded, and from the first participant who fills in the survey, you can see the data live in real time in the dashboard. You can of course also download it to CSV, Excel, etc. But yeah, no, it's totally yours. We don't even use it for benchmarks unless you want to build your own benchmarks.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Caroline. And I think with that, it's time for our dragons to contemplate a little bit. You, as an online viewer, obviously we want the public vote as well. So I've opened up a poll which actually says, which new technique would you put your money on? And if you start the vote now, you can see the real-time results. While we switch places and our pitchers can join me for our great fun. You can walk around, Grant, and just join us here in the little booth. We have one vote so far. We have seen 3 new techniques. Yeah, please step in, huddle in a bit so we all fit in the shot. Here we go, here we go, here we go. So I guess we saw 2 new techniques which are really about getting new samples and new people in, and then one technique which is beautifully about how to interpret your data even better, right?
Yes.
Well, dear judges, if it was your case and you were being pitched by these 3 in your office, who would you go for and why?
Yeah, the good thing is they want 2 different things. David just wants my time; he'll get it. I come to the, I'll go to your, I'll come to your presentation, and then I'll go for the for Graham because I think it is fascinating to help a challenger. So that would be
kind of meta-level judgment here, but okay.
No, I think both very interesting proposal to a really a core opportunity we have as market research, definitely, and I like challenging approaches, so that's why.
All right, thank you very much, Florence.
Okay, so you're coming back in to speak to my data scientist because I think you'd have a very intellectual conversation that I would just like to be on the sidelines of. So again, your time would be very valuable to us. And this is very interesting as well because you're both trying to solve the same problem or present a different, unique way of solving something that as an insights manager we often get. I would probably also... We have used a bit of Google surveys anyway, so I'm already on board in a way. But I think that the challenge, the unique way of thinking about people going to inputting incorrect URL and ending up at a place where there's something to see, I think that's a really innovative way of thinking, so I'd probably support your idea.
I'll be in both your offices next week.
Well, you've got to come to Melbourne, so good luck with the flight.
Congratulations. And I can also see that by our online viewers, actually, David, congratulations, you got the public vote. So it's just a minor difference. I don't think we have a representative sample, so perhaps we should have...
My family didn't vote?
No, that's not yet. But I guess if we want to learn more about it, we see you later today on Channel 1, 4 o'clock. We see you later today on Channel 2, right after lunch break, actually.
Right.
And we already saw you on Channel 1, right? So thank you very much for being here. We'll move on to the next item.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
And with that, we're moving to the next item on our show, where we're going to talk about another inspiring technology. It's called deprivation. Like what happens if you leave stuff out? And for that, I have with me Dave McCoffin and Vanessa Oshimi. They're still looking at, what? Are we on right now already? Yes, you are. And obviously, they're still being mic'd. So I'll tell you a little bit about what they do. David is actually known as a thought leader on what Asian youth thinks. He's been around. He's originally from Australia. He worked a lot in Thailand and all over Asia. And he's really an expert and a frequently asked speaker on the topic of what moves youth. And Vanessa, she's from the Coca-Cola company in Japan, and she has had a lot of experience there in research. Since she was a child, she's always been curious about why is that? And she used that drive and that curiosity to actually write a paper together with Dave, which is being presented later today in Channel 2. You should turn on right after, oh no, it's tomorrow I should say, right after lunch tomorrow on Channel 2. They're both on, and they explain all about, yeah, join me guys, come on. I'm just swimming here waiting for you guys to be ready.
Hi,
welcome,
nice to see you.
Glad to meet you. Yeah. Good to have you here. Welcome.
Great. She works for Coke. Obviously, I don't.
Oh, really? We were wondering. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice little product placement over there. But you just started your company, Bibliosexual.
Yes,
Very
I did.
interesting name. Only in April this year, I understood.
Yes.
What made you make that move?
Just change your lifestyle from working for big companies to do my own thing, just float around Asia and sort of bore people with my point of view on things. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how's it taking off?
That's okay. I mean, I'm traveling a lot. My wife's complaining I'm never home, so I guess that's a good thing. You know.
Hopefully she's watching here right now. You guys wrote a paper. It's called deprivation. I hate the term, but as a new technique, which is basically about how about if we take stuff away?
Yes.
Can you take us back to the moment when this occurred to you? Like, hey, wait a second, we can do this differently.
Yeah, well, actually, we met up in Tokyo, and we were just basically, we were sitting and we were talking about the fact that there's a lot of people who talk about new technologies. And we've got, whether it's neuro or these other kind of new things, gamification and things like that. And we started to just talk to each other about what recently have we done that's been quite interesting, that's got like really good insight. And what we realized was the things that we were talking about were actually old techniques done slightly differently.
Yep.
And I started talking about the fact that we'd just done a particular survey, which is covered in the paper, where we'd just basically banned people from using a product that they use every day,
Yeah.
and to figure out what it is that they do.
Yeah, and I think in the paper you referred to a very old case that we
Yeah.
all knew,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
that kind of happened by incident.
Yes, we'll talk about that. It's actually 30 years
Yeah.
since we did the biggest deprivation study in the world, which
By
is,
accident?
by accident, which was removing of classic Coca-Cola and replacing it with new Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Until we did that, we didn't understand really the true connection that the brand has.
That people
yeah.
had. I mean, at the time, I was working for the ad agency that was doing that campaign. Nearly killed us. I think it nearly killed the people at Coke at the time, because we all went around and realised that we had not done the obvious, which was we'd done all the research to ask people, what do you thought of the new thing, but not said, well, what do you think if this disappears? And when Vanessa and I got talking about this early in the year, we just came to the realisation that, we're not going to offer up any new techniques or anything. And most of the people, to be honest, that attend Congress probably have done deprivation studies. But what we tend to forget is sometimes just by taking things away, we learn a lot more than by, having everything in front of people. And absence really forces us to make some new decisions, new ideas, etc.
Yeah, I think that's so true. We spend so much time actually figuring out the stimulus we want to put in front of consumers. But how about if we just switched that around and said, what will we do if we just took the stimulus away? And we just stripped it right back to the basics of the topic that we're talking about, rather than overstimulating with, can you look at this concept? Can you look at this storyboard? Can you look at this mood board? Here's a TV commercial. And basically strip it right back. Yeah. So that's where we kind of started.
So we just explore with that.
Yeah.
And some of it, we talk about, some of it is based on the actual research and changing the format of the research. Some of it's just the way in which we actually do some interpretation, and taking away, and some of it's just sensory. We tend to be reliant on certainly sensory factors and when we're interpreting research or analysing it, and we're not using all of our own senses. So by taking away the ones we obviously use, but like hearing, for example, or reading, we sometimes get new interpretations.
And I think that was interesting for me with Dave, because Dave travels all around the world and he sees different languages, and of course he doesn't speak all of the different languages.
I barely speak English, right?
And so he has to rely on so many other cues besides the words that people are saying.
Exactly. And I read this has led to the fact that now when you're watching focus groups or panels, every third of them, you just switch off
usually
audio.
about 1 in 3 I don't listen. I just watch.
And that gives you a lot of new
Well,
insight.
it really started off as a point of frustration that, I've watched literally thousands of focus groups, and I've received hundreds of written reports from different research companies. And, the old adage is 70% of all communication is non-verbal, and yet I very rarely see any research report that actually writes about the non-verbal cues going on, so...
Yeah. Well, I just experimented with another technique that you described. What if the moderator just stops asking questions?
Yeah.
Well, that worked very well.
Worked very well, yeah.
Well, that helps when you've got two big mouths going on, so, yeah.
All right. So, and this is already explaining what your paper is all about. You very practically describe all these examples of stuff you can take away and what it leads to.
Sure.
Question is, if I'm a researcher watching right now, how can I start with this? How do I determine which angle to go?
That's a good question. It's interesting for me because one of the things that forced us to actually start thinking about deprivation techniques was that we just felt like we were hitting a brick wall. Like we'd done all the asked and answered, we'd done the standard approach, and we just seemed to be going around in circles. And so then it was like, well, could we try something else?
Yeah.
And I think that would be the first step for me.
And
which
that's
is,
the first cue, I guess.
Yes.
If you're in your department, you think, we need to do something else.
And one of the things is, and look, people attending Congress watching this is going to see dozens of new ideas. But one of the cues for us was the fact that sometimes, in the frustration of what do I do to get a different answer, it's not about trying something absolutely new. It's about looking at something you've been doing in a new way.
I think that's so true.
And we rush around trying to adapt new technologies all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it's because we really haven't thought through enough how to use the things we have, and maybe use them either more efficiently or in a different way. And changing the stimulus often does that.
Yeah. And I think my final point is to actually take the time to do something a little differently takes time. It takes thinking time. And I think finding the time to actually do that, as opposed to, we'll just do the discussion guide in the focus group the way we always do it, just to sort of take a breath, take a moment and try to rethink it. It takes time.
And the results you guys described are pretty amazing, eh?
Yeah.
Because what may we expect if we actually start to do that?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you write a paper, you show things that have results. Yeah.
Show things that have good results. Normally.
But the tenure of the paper says it actually allows us to go to a deeper drivers of consumer behavior.
Yes.
How does that work?
Well, if you think about it, if you take a normal situation, like I said, and you remove one or two of the normal senses and sensory factors, we all know the story, that when somebody goes blind, whether it's technically true or not, or they seem to hear things better, or maybe they just concentrate more. And so it's really just that. I mean, if you think about it, if you take away the obvious factor and you're left with the other things that are around it, it forces you to use those differently, and so therefore you might pick up something that you hadn't noticed before.
Yep.
And we've done that in different ways. Vanessa will explain examples where she's taken away obvious stimulus pieces. I've taken away actual physical sensory experiences so that I can see the way people do normal everyday things, but without the obvious sensory factor they would normally expect.
I think also too, at least for Coca-Cola, when we talk about why has it been so effective, is that sometimes something like drinking water, like drinking out of a bottle of water or something like, becomes so much part of your routine that you're forgetting about exactly what it does and what it means and how it's so part of your day.
And you could never rationally make that explicit.
And when people says to you, how important it is that you get to this kind of level, it's like your mobile phone. When you know what it is like when you've lost your mobile phone for a couple of days, and then suddenly you realize just all the things that it does. It wasn't just the texting. It was my calendar's in there. All these other things are in there, and that's, I think, for us, because we're such a part of everyday life. that when you
It's the
take it
only way
away,
to
it makes
really
it so
get
much
to that
easier to
level.
articulate.
I mean, if you think about an awful lot of what we're doing, for right or wrong, as an industry, spend a lot of time trying to validate behaviours. And sometimes...
Validate versus explore.
Well, yeah, but maybe we don't do enough exploring, you know,
Exactly.
because by just asking people or observing people doing everyday things, what you're doing is, in a sense, validating, well, we think they're going to do that.
Right, yeah.
But for example, the example of, you know, no coffee in the morning, ever.
And what does that do
What happens to you after a month of no
Yeah.
coffee,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
if you're like me and you drink 3-4 cups a day, usually before lunch, you start to get really twitchy for a start. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
But we know that. But then what happens with the way? What do you replace it with? How do your other habits change around it? You know?
I love the example, and then that's the final thing you described about fruit juice drinkers and vegetable juice drinkers, right?
Yes.
And there, the key was looking at what they replaced it with to
Yes.
better understand why they
Yes.
buy it in the
Yes,
first place,
yes,
right?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's a very interesting read. I think your talk will be very interesting as well.
I hope so.
Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Right after lunch, 12:25 on Channel 2, so you should definitely watch that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving us a little preview in this
No,
little studio.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And keep rocking.
Yes,
That's it.
absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to chat and look over to Marcel van Overveld right here in the corner. Marcel, you are our online moderator. What are you doing in this little corner?
Yes, I'm trying to interact with the viewers, and I
Yes.
know we have many,
Yeah.
but I think most European viewers are having a quick lunch, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
You're saying we don't see them.
we don't see them, so
So-
I invite them kindly to share anything with us, a picture where you're watching.
Exactly.
Uh,
So
ask
if
questions.
you're watching right now, take out the smartphone. We all know
Yeah.
you have it. Take a little picture and tweet it out. #Esomar TV.
Yeah, let's give them
You
a
want
good
to give
example.
them a good example?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we
yeah.
go live.
Let's do
Monitor
so.
the hashtag. There we
Yeah,
go.
there we go.
Esomar TV. All right, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
And another thing they can do, if you're listening to the interviews that we're holding, in the bottom of your screen, there's the ask box, right?
Yeah,
so they can
definitely.
actually type in questions.
Yeah, that's the interaction panel, as we like to call it. Yeah, you can ask questions, chat, and poll if there's an active one, and we will let you know.
All right.
So please
Good luck.
interact.
Okay.
Thanks, Garrett.
And with that, I can go to my next guest, who's already here, ready at the table. Reed Cundiff,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Are working at Microsoft, and you submitted a paper for this Congress where you call about from chaos to opportunity.
That's right. Yeah.
And it describes the process that you guys used in Microsoft to go from a product-oriented view to a more consumer-driven view.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what happened?
Sure thing. Well, it was an example of where we had really rapid rate of change in the consumer technology market that a lot of people that aren't necessarily engaged in it day to day would recognize, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. So those kind of market shifts where we had an explosion of engagement in the category, of new device types, of new apps and services available, that pushed us to have to rethink how we architect our understanding of how different subcategories within consumer technology play with one another. So it was relatively easy to think about how Windows and Office play with one another, but then as you get this explosion of apps and device types, et cetera, we needed to rethink that because it was a much more complex environment.
You're getting competition from all different sides, right?
That's right, that's right.
And you need to get grip of that.
Yeah, and competition was one side of it, but there was also just like any large organization that is a portfolio business, we tended to operate in silos. So Xbox would think about their customers, Office would think about their customers, Windows would think about theirs, and
All
rarely
doing research, all optimizing, all, yeah.
That's right, and rarely acknowledging that there was, in fact, a combination. When we took a user-centric point of view, people use multiple products and services, right? And so when we have the user at the center, we have a very different view with fewer gaps and better understanding than when we actually think about things in product silos.
And can you take us a little bit along that process? What does it mean? Just throwing all the CRM databases on one big pile and saying, oh, I see Reed in that database and in that database, and then we're there? Is that?
If it were only that easy.
Yeah.
A lot of what we did, first of all, was try and re-architect the work that we did. So instead of looking at a specific category, say productivity software or operating systems or mobile devices, we wanted to take a look across the board at what a user owns and uses across the different devices and subcategories within consumer technology.
Yeah.
Then we wanted to understand really the ties that bind specific products and services to one another. And if you look at simple correlations, it's going to be a jumbled mess.
Yeah.
Everybody uses everything in some sort of combination. So then we needed to get deeper into the real things that matter, the combinations that matter. And that's where we partnered with Ipsos in this case to be able to use Bayesian modeling to be able to understand what are those truly unique relationships across either Microsoft's or Apple's or Google's, for example, across their ecosystems, and then where do we interconnect as well? So getting those to understand.
And what kind of challenges did you have to overcome in this process? Can you highlight some, because say our viewers are listening and they think, oh yeah, we should do that. I've been saying that for a while, but now I hear Reed do it at Microsoft. What can they expect? What walls will they run into?
Well, so I would say, first of all, being able to architect a piece of work that gathers information. For us, it's important to be able to get both perception data and behavioral data, to be able to and get them at a respondent level to really understand what that map of a consumer's technology world looks like. That would be the biggest issue with the gathering phase. In the analytic phase, this is where, to be honest with you, our partnership with Ipsos has been excellent. And so we've been able to really work hard, so it's not simple, but be able to come up with those analytic techniques and visualization tools that give us a good sense of what happens. But definitely the socialization of that work, when you have an existing, somewhat siloed organization, was the biggest challenge to be able to go from idea to action.
Exactly, and because you describe in your paper that it has influenced the way you engineer your product, you market your products, the way you're organized internally.
Yeah.
How did you do that? After, so you made these beautiful new insights.
Yeah.
How did you rock this whole organization?
Well, this is also a case where a lot of great work was really important, and timing is everything.
All right.
So we hit, I think, we really hit a really key point in time for the company where there was an opportunity to rethink how we did things. And as you mentioned, everything from our business strategy to the way we're organized internally to how we develop products to how we come to market, all those things were at a time when the company realized, especially at very senior levels, something needed to change.
Okay.
And so the insights team was prepared through our partnership with Ipsos to be ready to deliver that call to action. So I would say that we had that magic 24-hour window where we were able to have that type of insight, and we've just continued to try and build on that over the last several years.
Yeah, and I guess it's not that coincidental because the world for a lot of companies is changing super rapidly, and startups and competition is coming from all sides, right? So
very much, very much.
You present your paper later today on Channel 2. We can read all about it. But what are the next steps? I mean, this describes how you got to this point.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future going?
Well, so I think the future is actually in play right now. So a couple of big examples that you see as the result of this work, and then in combination with a lot of great thinking across Microsoft, is you see Windows is now offering a free upgrade to Windows 10. And so having the confidence to be able to do things like that, or offer Office for free on iOS and Android devices, that comes with a level of confidence in understanding how the ecosystem works.
Because you have the insight that if someone uses Windows 10 for free, they probably buy Office or whatever the insights are.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
what I would call the post-sale monetization opportunity
and that's
that we
now
have as a company.
Supported with structured data.
That's right.
And not a guess or a gamble.
That's right.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing this story. It's very interesting, and we're looking forward to your presentation later today.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And with that, let me check in with Marcel for now. Marcel, anything happening online?
Well, a few things, yes. And I would like to request the viewers to look at the poll that we just opened up. Just to get ahead of things and get some reactions in. So go to the interaction panel and click on poll, where we would like your answer and your view on a very interesting question, I would say.
If you had a magic wand and you could improve this industry, what would you do? in terms
Definitely.
of methodology, proving its value, whatever you want to change.
Anything to add value to what your industry is doing. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, the reason why we ask you that is because we've come to a point in the program that we all look very much forward to. We're going to debate this, and my guests are already at my table, so let's go back to my table. Gentlemen, we're very glad you're here. Welcome.
Hello.
On the far end, we have Simon Chadwick, Editor-in-Chief of Research World, Pete Cape of SSI, and John Kieran. Glad you joined us. We haven't met before, but we're glad you're here.
Nice to meet you.
For the next 15 minutes or so, we want to go a little bit deeper into, obviously, you guys are seen as thought leaders in this field and in this industry. So it would be very interesting to hear from you guys, if you guys had a magic wand, and it would be one thing that you could change today to the market research industry, what would it be? And you're already glowing and smiling about it. So
he's ready.
Shoot, John.
Okay, if it was one thing,
Yeah.
it would be to basically have everyone go on a behavioral marketing science course, just a 101 of how people really make decisions, and rework the whole research industry to reflect the irrationality, the intuition and the emotion that
Of
really
people,
drives
of our research
decision
subjects.
making,
Yeah.
and to stop asking purchase intention and all the direct questions which have little or no correlation with actual behavior. Behavior, 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 and emotion for the rest.
All right. Well, interesting. Let's do a quick round first, and then we go deeper into that.
Okay,
Pete,
well, what he said.
magic wand goes to you.
Okay, my magic one actually is not that dissimilar to John's. It just takes a slightly different tack. If I explain to you how it is that I get my car fixed. So when I go to get to the garage, I tell the guy what's wrong with my car. Okay, he then shows me a bunch of toolboxes that he has, and I tell him which one he's to use, and he opens them up, and then I pick the spanners that he should use to fix my car, and when he's finished fixing my car, I then haggle him down on the price. So that's kind of how I do my cars. It's also the way that market research gets done. We're somehow too open, too asking of our clients to approve of what it is that we do, and yet we're the ones who are the experts. We should be the experts in behavioral science, bringing it to the table, not seeking for people to tell us that it's okay to do it. So if I was to wave my magic wand, I would go back in time to about 1400, and I would set up a market researchers guild, and only we would be able to practice it, and no one else would be able to tell us what to do.
All right. Interesting take. Simon,
I'm going
wand goes to you.
I'm going to go in a different direction, because all of this is absolutely wonderful, but if you don't get through to the C-suite and they don't act, it's totally worthless. So there is no insight without action. So my magic wand would be that every single head of research will be a C-suite member and will have a direct line to the CEO, and what he says goes. And if he screws up, fine, he can get fired, but basically, research is in charge of strategy, and research is in the C-suite.
All right.
So
Respond, John. Yeah, please.
I think my challenge to that is, because we have been obsessed with being in the C-suite, but I wonder whether, the British government model, which has a nudge unit, so Cameron has had a nudge unit, which basically deploys behavioral science to help the work of government. They have huge influence in government, but they're not in government. And I don't know, for me, I see us more as that, clever, smart, creative advisors trying to help the C-suite produce profitable brand growth, rather than, and I don't know, because the
Simon,
people
why do you want that C-suite responsibility? Why do you want to make the call?
Let's put it this way: there's got to be a direct line between research and I'd say the CEO. You were talking to Reed Cundiff earlier. Before Reed was at Microsoft, there was a guy called Marco Frins, who's written a number of great books.
Yeah.
And he talks about the curation of insights, that once you actually have got insights or a result from your research, you have to actually curate it through the organization in order to make sure that action takes place. And that means you have to be a consultant, that means you have to be an influencer, that means you have to have, basically have the ear, and you have to be relentless, because otherwise it's fallow ground. You're putting seed on fallow ground.
I think what all three of us are saying is actually essentially the same thing. And it's what's been reflected in this morning at the Congress. It's about pride and knowledge of what it is that we do and taking it to another level, bringing in knowledge from outside, which we are good at. We just don't shout about it. Some of us don't shout about it. Some of us do.
Some of us don't shut up about it.
John, let's validate. Are you saying we're really good at what we do? Because you said, no, we need to go on the one-on-one course.
Look,
because we're literally off.
I'm afraid, we're not good enough as an industry in total yet. There aren't enough people, in my experience, with the capability, the charisma to be on a board and actually have the influence. There are some, but they are the exception. And I think, you have to have a bit of humility. What are we really good at? What could we be better at in the industry? And I do think we could be basically consultants, but using behavioral science to consult and help marketing. We're good at that.
We could indeed, if we can free ourselves from the worries that we have about the way in which we do the stuff that we do. We've got to step away from all of that and start thinking strategically about businesses and businesses' problems, because we have something to offer.
It's no coincidence that over the last 15 to 18 months, there have been 15 Fortune 500 companies that have hired management consultants from McKinsey, Bain, BCG in as head of strategy and insights.
Yep. You are much more used to the environment, the conversation, influencing how to present a good story.
Right.
And
all of the above.
Use market research agencies as suppliers to them.
Right.
They take our stuff and present it, and because they know how to do it, and that's what we would have to be better at.
And we could also say, so what? I mean, they have been schooled in behavioral science. They are very analytical. They're all these young fellas. Let them do it, and you guys can get back to work and collecting data.
But they haven't been. So the consultants don't know behavioral science. They're basically much more rational than they should be. I mean, they're smart enough to get it, and they're interested in it. But basically, it's not about system 2 heavy thinking. It's actually about how emotion and storytelling is actually how companies grow. And that's a little uncomfortable for them. They're a little bit system 2 and a bit cognitive.
Exactly. So Simon, Pete, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you suggesting that we should wave our magic wand and disappear into our own little black room?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm just saying that I hear a lot of professions saying, oh, we should be in the boardroom. If you go to a marketing conference, they say the marketeer should be in the C-suite. If you go to an HR conference, the HR guy should be in the C-suite. In the end, I guess we should all go then to an egalitarian organization where we are. That's not the case. So you could also say, instead of stretching our skill set and becoming something we're not, why not specialize and focus to what we're really good at?
Yeah.
I think because and again, I go back to what I said earlier. Once you actually produce a truth or an insight or a finding, it has absolutely no value whatsoever
if it's not
acted upon.
Yeah.
And so research departments back in the 80s and 90s, certainly in the United States, were reduced to tactical basement organizations that were not impacting their businesses one iota.
And you're saying if we let that happen, then indeed the magic wand is gone.
We've just put the rabbit back in the hat.
Yeah. But I do think, it would suit us, our slightly introverted, science-orientated geekiness, to be the policy, kind of clever policy people behind the scenes influencing, perhaps, rather than being centre stage. That's all. And I think
the point you make is right. The sort of people who are attracted to this industry are exactly that.
For that reason,
they're people who like the truth. They're interested in the science of it. They like the art of it as well. A lot of people wouldn't want to step themselves up into a C-suite. That's why you have Simon, and that's why we have you. And you can do that, Not everybody needs to be in the C-suite, but the industry as a whole needs to have its voice in there.
Yeah.
Or wants to have
so you see, you're basically saying people with a marketing research background should rise to that position. In fact, so they can kind of guide the herd.
That it's possible to rise through to that place.
And it has been done before. I'm older than these two gents.
Yeah.
And
because you're kind of sketching an image where history repeats, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I was working in this country in the 80s. I was in with boardrooms every single day. and they would listen. And and then I went to the States, and when I tried to do that, I was roundly slapped around the head and told that, I was supposed to be a green eye shade guy.
Yeah. But the more we start to connect what we do with profitable brand growth,
right,
which is where I think the marketing science is starting to help show what drives real long-term growth. The C-suite tend to listen then.
Oh,
but if we get lost in our little kind of mechanics and the details of the
details
method.
are not important. The method's not important. The details aren't important. The actionability of what you're saying and the relationship to the business is what's important.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it has no meaning.
Exactly. It has no meaning whatsoever.
All right. Well, I think we could go on for a little bit. Obviously, we all heard the sounding bells. I mean, stuff is starting to go on.
And I'm on stage.
And you're on stage, exactly. So just to round it off, take the camera.
Yeah.
We have thousands of viewers, and if it's not now live, it's definitely in the recording.
They will do.
If you could say to them one thing that they should do differently tomorrow, what would it be?
Okay. Dan Ariely, basically his university has a free online course. If you're smart enough to be watching this, you're smart enough to go and register for his course about being irrational, predictably irrational. Take it. It's a fantastic course. It'll put you in good stead.
Thank you very much, John. And please run off because you'll be on and Channel
All
1
right, bye.
about now. Okay. Leave the mic. Pete, what would you say?
Oh, well, I'd say after you finish reading the book by Dan Ariely, which is a fantastic book anyway, go and read a textbook about market research from one of the great research gurus, Don Dillman or something like that, so you really understand those things that you've been taught.
All right. Great message. Simon?
I would say embrace who you are proudly and shout it from the rooftops.
All right. Very clear messages. Thank you very much. I hope we made a little impact on the industry by doing this.
Where's the wand?
The wand? Here you go.
Hey.
All right. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're clear?
Ik ga niet het pad in. And while all the delegates are making their way back into the room, we take our last final 5 minutes of this break to actually give you another insight into inspiring methodologies. We're going to talk about the business impact of marketing research on Channel 1, and we're going to talk much more about inspiring technologies on Channel 2 in a minute. But before you go there, please stick around for another few 5-6 minutes while I talk to Adam Phillips. Please join me, who is on the Esomar Professional Standards Committee. And we want to explore a bit all these new technologies, all these new developments.
Yeah.
They might pose some new ethical dilemmas to our profession or ethical challenges.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate? What is the biggest challenge you see coming at us at the moment?
I think that the thing we need to remember is why we have ethics is because we, like all other industries, depend on trust. So we need to be sure that the people who provide us with data trust us enough with the data, and the clients who buy it from us believe that what we're giving to them is a really good, honest reflection of reality. And so our ethical work in the new technologies is really aimed at making sure we meet those expectations.
Because how are the new technologies breaching this trust?
Okay, well, a lot of it is to do with suspicion rather than reality. So when you collect data online, people have this idea that somewhere hidden away, their secrets are being extracted. Now, a lot of the time, actually, they've agreed to provide the information, and the way that it's going to be used is in a form which is anonymous. They will not be identified. But because of the way online works, if it's not a straightforward question and answer situation, there's no way of telling them that. And so they become concerned. So one of the things that researchers need to do when they talk and when they put their privacy statements out is explain to people, just like Apple does in its privacy statements, really what research is about, and the risks are negligible. So that's one of the risks. The other one is in social media, where people's comments are being captured. And of course, if it's Twitter, well, they want people to see their comments.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
However, if it's Facebook, until recently, it was quite possible to collect data from Facebook on pages which people might assume were private. And then you worry people because they can be re-identified by their comments. Facebook have just closed that door 2 weeks ago.
All
and
right.
that has destroyed a number of sentiment analysis businesses. And we really need to work on this because we want to make sure that we can continue to collect that data, which is useful to the customer who's trying to get feedback to the manufacturer often. You know, they want their product to be better.
Yeah.
Without it being worrying to them about their privacy being breached.
Excellent.
So that's where we write guidelines to help researchers explain it. It's where we talk to Facebook. It's where we go and lobby government to make sure the laws make it possible for us to continue to do this. So those are the kind of challenging areas: online data collection and sentiment.
And then, as a solution, you mentioned we should write clearer privacy statements, for example.
Yeah, they've got to
Then-
be easily accessible.
Yeah, I would challenge, nobody reads them, right? I think there's even research about that like 99% of the people just blindly click the I'm okay, let's go on.
And you know, I had a discussion with some banking people a few years ago about the fact that banking agreements to get a bank run to like 20 pages.
Yeah.
And I said, do you ever read the contractual and privacy policies in your software, or do you just click through? They just click through. That's what people do.
That's common practice.
What we have to do is to try and make sure that our privacy behaviors actually come up ahead of that contract stuff in a way which is interesting and engaging, and then they can get more information if they want to. And if you look at Apple, for example,
How are they
iOS
doing that?
9 comes out.
Yeah.
I see on it there's a piece, you know, click through this if you want. So I start looking at it. 20 pages of stuff, all of it
Very
incomprehensible.
nitty-gritty,
very
small print.
On page 2, there is a description of a hyperlink. It's not even hyperlinked, which says, if you want to know more about our privacy, go to www.apple.com/privacy. And when you go there, it's a fantastic site. It describes what they do, how they don't really stuff to the government, what your controls are, how you can be sure that they're treating your data well. Why do you have to go to a hyperlink in a document
of
you never
putting it
read?
right there.
That's the one that needs to be there first.
All right.
And what I say in the research industry, you should not copy Apple, you should copy the good bits, but don't do it the bad way.
Exactly. So your message here today, I guess, is can be summarized as it's in our own benefit to actually make sure that these guidelines are abided to, right?
It's definitely in our benefit. Jean Burton, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland, who's opening today, she said, you know, when we use not just polls as politicians, but in government we use surveys to drive all policy decision because they have to be evidence-based. Now, there's a lot of bad research around, and it's really vital that you help us sort the wheat from the chaff. And that's a challenge for you in this new world where more and more people are doing research.
As
that's
an industry
what we're
together.
trying to do. And that's our guidance is moving from booklets which you have to read into webinars, into top 10 things you need to think about, which are linked to more detailed descriptions if you need it, and to little lectures online which take you through the things you need to know. Because we believe in the future, many of the people who are doing research will not have trained as researchers, and we should be able to help them do it right.
Well, finally, because this show can be watched both by Esomar members and non-members.
Yep.
So where can they find this stuff? Where do I go if I want to go deeper?
If they go to the Esomar website and they go to the standards page, they will find there the codes and the guidelines which they can look through. They'll also find a heading on the left-hand side which says other research material. If they click on that, there's some very interesting stuff on security and cloud databases, on the way that you should think about data privacy, questions you should ask yourself, on the kind of things that you need to look at if you're thinking about doing neuroscience, or how you should buy a good sample for online panels. So these are things that we provide that you can find.
All right. Well, Adam, thank you very much for being here. Obviously, the rooms upstairs are starting, we're cutting this short. I'm really enjoyed this. I think it's very important for this industry to move further along, and thank you for all the work on that.
And thank you, Gerrit, for giving me the time to talk to you.
Of course.
Okay.
And with that, we come to the end of this lunch break session. As I explained already, on Channel 1, you can watch more about the business impact of new inspiring methodologies. And in Channel 2, you can see actually in depth more about the methodologies, of which some of them were being pitched and discussed in this show. If you want to read more about them, make sure you check out the Esomar website where all publications will be available to you. And I'm looking forward to see you back here on Channel 3 at 4:30 Ireland time, by the time the US has woken up. So make sure, if you're enjoying this, you send a link to some of your friends and they can join us as well. 4:30, we're going to talk about cross-media measurement. Is that really the Holy Grail?